In those first few years of our movement to celebrate Mary of Magdala, we were thrilled with each and every new group that participated. We were surprised when we went from celebrations in 23 cities in the first year to celebrations in 150 cities in the second year. And by the fifth year, we had counted 224 celebrations, not just across the United States, but internationally. We were in the United Kingdom, in Kenya, South Africa, El Salvador, Australia, and Canada. And since then, there have been celebrations in countries around the world. We don't have a final count for this year, but we know there will be well over 300 celebrations across the world. We've been shocked. We've been pleased. We really were not sure that a celebration like this every year was sustainable. But we touched a deep chord, one that twitched and spasmed, one that started a movement that we could not have anticipated. We could not have predicted this. And the creativity put forth in these celebrations also surprised us. There were certainly great speakers. There were musical programs. There were liturgical dance programs. There were enactments of women leaders of our church. Scripts were written. Prayer services were offered. But most importantly, people, both men and women, were engaged in the thought that there is biblical evidence of the importance of women in our church. And that's the chord we struck. Women of faith were yearning for a reflection of themselves in church celebrations. They were hungry for role models. They were yearning for hope. And the celebration of Mary of Magdala as the apostle to the apostles provided just that. But let me tell you about some of the negatives we dealt with over the years. There was a gentleman in my home parish at the time who accused me and all the supporters of FutureChurch of being Wiccan, of wanting to start a coven of some sort because we dared to say that Mary of Magdala was not a prostitute. Little aside, my husband, God bless him, took great delight during that period of introducing me as a witch. We were picketed because we dared to speak out about expanding women's roles in our church, of recognizing the contributions of women in the history of our church. But we persevered. We did not give up because we knew that that chord had been struck, that it had started to sing a great song, and it took on a life of its own. Press coverage was surprisingly supportive of our movement. We had people all over the country writing editorial pieces about Mary of Magdala and restoring her rightful place in church history. And the papers ran them. We were surprised. Over the years, we've had great coverage in not only Catholic publications, but in secular press, in publications like the LA Times, Dallas Morning News, the Chicago Sun-Times. These are big publications. We've also had radio and television news coverage, both in the United States and overseas. Great coverage, good publicity for FutureChurch, but better, telling the story of women in our church. We certainly were not the first to proclaim the true identity of Mary of Magdala as the apostle to the apostles, but I like to think that it was because of the efforts of FutureChurch that we are now celebrating the feast day of St. Mary of Magdala. And there are some among us who think that author Dan Brown owes FutureChurch just a bit of credit for the success of the book, The Da Vinci Code. After all, we were the ones that started the movement to see Mary of Magdala in a new light. My children, 2 sons and a daughter, all adults now, have asked me over the years why I continue my work with FutureChurch. Why put so much effort into changing an institution that just does not seem to want to recognize that women are an integral part of it? They do not understand my fervor for church reform. I raised them with my feminist ideals. They truly believe women and men are equal. So I tell them that growing up during the age of Vatican II, seeing that promise unfulfilled, and continuing to see a church that does not mirror the people in the pews has impacted me greatly. When I see an injustice, I want to fix it, and not for myself. I want to fix it for them, for their children, for the future generations. So my motto has become, and they know this, if I don't do this, who will? If we don't work for change, how will change happen? So forgive me, I get a little emotional like Chris did about this particular celebration. The feast of St. Mary of Magdala. Doesn't that sound wonderful? I feel validation for all the work we've done over these years. Our persistence in proclaiming her role as the apostle to the apostles. Our powerful message that women matter in this church and that we need extended roles in this church. With the elevation of the celebration of St. Mary of Magdala to a feast day, recognition by our church of the importance of this particular woman who God chose to proclaim the good news of the risen Christ, we now have a glimmer of hope for change that could come. And the announcement by Pope Francis of the formation of a commission to study the possibility of reinstituting women deacons in the Catholic Church gives us even more hope for change in the future. We will continue to be diligent. We take nothing for granted, but we feel the Spirit moving, and she is helping us build a future church for our daughters and our sons.